Right now, somewhere in an old garden in the American South, a bean vine is pushing up through the soil without anyone asking it to. Nobody planted it this spring. Nobody planted it last spring either. The roots have been down there since the Clinton administration, or longer, just waiting out the winter and coming back up when the soil warms. And that vine is going to produce beans from June until hard frost. Months of harvest from a planting that happened before some of you were born. That is not a fantasy. That is just what scarlet runner beans do. And the fact that most American gardeners have never grown one, never even heard of one, is one of the stranger agricultural stories of the last 100 years. Because this plant fed families through the Great Depression, it kept producing when the Dust Bowl buried half the crops in the Midwest. Your great-grandmother almost certainly knew it. Somewhere between the victory gardens of World War II and the rise of the supermarket freezer aisle, we quietly set it aside. Today we are going to look at what it actually is, what it can do, why it disappeared, and how you bring it back. Let us get into this. The scarlet runner bean has been cultivated for somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 years, and by the time the American colonies were growing food in earnest, it was already a well-traveled plant with a long track record. Early American families did not discover it so much as inherit it. The name comes from the flowers. They bloom brilliant scarlet red all summer long, which is part of why it also became popular as an ornamental vine. People grew it up fences and arbors because it looked beautiful, but they were also eating it, and that combination, useful and beautiful at the same time, is something older gardeners understood in a way we seem to have forgotten. Here is the part that surprises most people when they first hear it. In the right climate zones, specifically Zone 7 and warmer, scarlet runner beans are true perennials. The root system survives the winter underground, exactly like asparagus or rhubarb, and it sends up new growth every spring without you doing a single thing. Even in colder zones, Zones 5 and 6, the roots often survive if you mulch them heavily in fall, and even when the roots do not make it, the plants self-seed so aggressively that you will have volunteer seedlings coming up from overwintered beans in the soil. Plant them once, and you are generally dealing with them forever in the best possible way. Most people who grow beans think about green beans, the kind you pick in early summer, cook for a few minutes, and eat as a side dish. Scarlet runners can absolutely be harvested that way when the pods are young, but the dried bean is a different conversation entirely. When you let scarlet runner beans fully mature on the vine and dry them out, you are looking at roughly 20 to 25 grams of protein per 100 grams of dried bean. That puts them in the same range as beef, and unlike beef, you are also getting around 15 grams of fiber, zero cholesterol, and a complete enough amino acid profile that your body can actually use the protein effectively. This is not the incomplete plant protein situation that leaves you hungry an hour later. The dried scarlet runner bean is genuinely nutritious food in a way that most vegetables simply are not. To put the production numbers in perspective, a single established vine in good soil can produce 10 to 15 pounds of beans across a season. If you plant a 20-foot row, you are realistically looking at close to 100 pounds of high-protein food that will store for 5 to 10 years in a cool, dry place. No refrigeration, no canning required. Just dry the beans and put them in jars. During the Depression, that kind of math kept families fed when everything else failed. Here is the comparison that tends to stop gardeners cold when they first hear it. A standard green bean plant, the kind that fills every seed rack at every garden center in April, produces for maybe 6 to 8 weeks if conditions are good. That is your window. You plant in May, you harvest through June and into July, and then it is over. Scarlet runner beans produce from June until the first hard frost. That is 4 to 5 months of continuous harvest from the same planting. The vines keep flowering and setting pods throughout the summer heat that shuts down other legumes. They keep going in dry spells that wilt snap beans. Once the root system is established, which takes about a month, these plants are largely running on their own. Part of the reason is the taproot, which on a mature plant goes down 3 to 4 feet, while your shallow-rooted vegetables are straining for moisture in the top 6 inches of soil. The scarlet runner is drawing from reserves that most vegetables cannot reach. 2 weeks without rain in July, and these vines keep producing like nothing happened. And the flowers themselves are edible. Those red blooms you see covering the vines all summer, you can toss them in salads. They taste mild and slightly sweet, a bit like a fresh young bean. Hummingbirds treat the whole vine like a personal feeder, which is either a bonus or a spectacle, depending on your gardening priorities. This is the part of the story that starts to make you a little frustrated once you see it clearly. The scarlet runner bean did not disappear because it stopped working. It disappeared because it did not fit the system that replaced the family garden. Modern agriculture runs on annuals. You plant, you harvest, you till under the old growth. You buy new seeds next year. That annual cycle is the whole business model for seed companies. A perennial bean that comes back on its own for 20 years is a one-time sale at best. There is no repeat revenue in a plant your customer never has to buy again. Beyond that, scarlet runner beans do not look like what the supermarket-trained American consumers came to expect. The pods are rougher and hairier than the uniform snap beans, bred specifically for appearance and machine harvesting. The beans themselves are bigger, with deep purple-black streaks on a speckled background. They are beautiful if you know what you are looking at, but they do not look like the picture on a frozen vegetable bag. When grocery stores became the primary way most Americans thought about food in the 1950s and 1960s, anything that looked different from what was on the shelf started to seem unfamiliar. Unfamiliar became old-fashioned. Old-fashioned became forgotten. There was also the cooking time. Dried scarlet runner beans need to soak overnight and simmer for an hour or more. In the era of TV dinners and 30-minute meals, that felt like a burden. What the convenience culture did not advertise was that you could make one pot of scarlet runner bean soup that would feed a family of 4 for 2 days, at a cost of maybe $3. The math was always there. The marketing just pointed somewhere else. There is one more dimension to the scarlet runner bean that most gardening content skips, and it is worth spending a few minutes on. It changes how you think about where to plant these and what to plant near them. Like all legumes, scarlet runner beans fix nitrogen. They pull nitrogen out of the air through a relationship with soil bacteria, and they deposit it directly into the ground through their roots. This is free fertilizer, essentially. But because the scarlet runner is a perennial with a massive root system, it fixes far more nitrogen over time than an annual legume does. Estimates for established plantings run between 100 and 200 pounds of nitrogen per acre per year. That is the kind of soil building that most farmers pay significant money to accomplish with synthetic fertilizer. Your corn loves growing near nitrogen-fixing legumes. Your tomatoes will show you the difference within a season or two. The soil itself gets measurably richer each year, instead of more depleted. The traditional Native American planting method called the Three Sisters worked exactly this way. Corn, beans, and squash were grown together deliberately. The beans climbed the corn stalks, fixed nitrogen for next year's corn crop, and everyone ate through the winter. The scarlet runner was doing this agricultural work long before anyone had a scientific explanation for it. The old-timers were not being quaint when they planted this way. They were running a more sophisticated farming system than most of what replaced it. If you are ready to try this, the process is more forgiving than you might expect. Wait until your soil temperature hits around 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Scarlet runners are more cold-tolerant than lima beans, but they will rot rather than germinate in cold, wet soil. In most of the country, that means late April into mid-May. Plant the seeds about 1 inch deep and 6 inches apart. If you are doing a row, leave 3 feet between rows, because the vines get substantial. And this is the critical part. You need support. These are vigorous climbers that reach 10 to 15 feet in a single season. If you plant them without a trellis, you will end up with a tangled mat on the ground that rots and attracts slugs. The old method was to plant them at the base of corn stalks. If you are not growing corn, put up cattle panels, a bamboo teepee, or a sturdy wooden trellis. Whatever you use, make sure it can hold 30 to 40 pounds of loaded vine, because a productive scarlet runner plant gets heavy. Water consistently for the first 3 to 4 weeks, while the plant is establishing its root system. After that, you barely need to intervene unless there is a serious prolonged drought. Do not fertilize with nitrogen. Too much nitrogen, and the plant grows leaves at the expense of beans. These plants evolve to thrive in poor soil, and they perform best when you let them do their thing. You have 2 harvest strategies, and most experienced growers use both. The first is to harvest pods young when they are 6 to 8 inches long. At that stage, cook them exactly like green beans. Steam them for 5 to 7 minutes, toss them with butter and salt, and you have a side dish with a richer, more substantial flavor than a snap bean. It is between a green bean and a lima bean with a slight nutty undertone. Some people say this is closer to what green beans tasted like before modern commercial varieties. Bread flavor out in favor of uniformity. The second strategy is to let the pods dry completely on the vine. Then shell out the dried beans and store them. This is where the serious nutrition is. Store those dried beans in a cool, dry location, and they will keep for 5 to 10 years. There is a Depression-era recipe that has been coming back into circulation in homesteading circles, and it is worth knowing. Soak 2 cups of dried scarlet runner beans overnight. Drain them and put them in a big pot with diced onion, carrots, and celery sautéed in a little bacon fat, a ham hock, 8 cups of water, and a bay leaf. Simmer it for 2 hours. The beans will be tender, slightly creamy, with a nutty flavor that holds up to the smoky ham in a way that pinto beans or navy beans simply do not. 1 part feeds 4 people twice. During the Depression, that was not a recipe, it was a survival strategy. Today, it is just honest, deeply satisfying food. If you are in Zone 7 or warmer, after the first frost cuts the vine down, trim it back to about 6 inches above the ground, and mulch the roots with 6 to 8 inches of straw or shredded leaves. Come March, new growth will emerge. Do nothing, just wait. In colder zones 5 and 6, the outcome depends on drainage and how hard the winter is. Wet, cold soil is what kills the roots. Well-drained soil with a heavy mulch gives you a reasonable chance of survival even in Zone 5. If the roots do not make it, let some pods dry on the vine in full, and do not clean up too thoroughly. Self-seeded volunteers will come up in spring. The full story of this plant plays out over years, not one season. An established scarlet runner planting that has been in the ground for a decade has a root system that is genuinely impressive. It draws from deep in the soil. It fixes nitrogen. It produces beans from June to frost. And it costs you almost nothing in time or materials to maintain. That is the kind of garden asset that older generations built their food security around. Most big box garden centers will not carry these, but they are not hard to find once you know where to look. Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds carries them, as does Seed Savers Exchange. Johnny Selected Seeds offers a variety called Painted Lady that has reportedly been in continuous cultivation since the 1820s. Local seed swaps and heirloom gardening groups are also worth checking, because many experienced gardeners still save these seeds every year and are happy to share them. expect to pay $3 to $5 for a packet. That is all you need to plant a 10-foot row. Save seeds from your best pods at the end of the season, and you never have to buy them again. The scarlet runner bean is not remarkable because it is exotic or newly discovered. It is remarkable because it is proven. It has thousands of years of cultivation across multiple continents. Families that ate through the hardest years in American history relied in part on this plant. Its nutritional profile holds up against modern analysis. Its growing system improves the land instead of depleting it. We did not lose it because something better came along. We lost it because the system that replaced the family garden had no room for a perennial you only buy once, that does not look uniform on a supermarket shelf, and that requires a little more patience than a frozen dinner. That system is showing some cracks right now. Seed prices go up. Fertilizer costs more every year. Supply chains are less reliable than people assumed. Many people are rediscovering that growing food that comes back on its own, that stores for years without refrigeration, and that feeds you real protein through the winter is not a nostalgic hobby. It is a practical choice. Your great-grandmother knew this plant. Her mother knew it before her. Getting back to it is less about going backward and more about remembering what actually worked. So I want to know, have you ever grown scarlet runner beans? Or is this the first time you have heard of them? Drop a comment below, because we genuinely read them all. And I am curious how many people in this community still have these growing somewhere. If this opened up a crop you had not considered before, hit subscribe and check out the next video on your screen, where we look at another forgotten American plant with a history just as long and a productivity that will surprise you. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.